This is an unconventional reading, a part of Fallout Equestria Broken Bonds, Chapter 23 of Mares and Stories by Kippershy.
Good evening, Colchester. This is Wings on the radio for you all. Tonight, to keep you all happy and to remind you that someone out there cares, I'm going to read to you bedtime stories. Opening up the book to page 62 with a smile, I began to read. Instead of focusing on my pitbuck, however, my attention turned back to the mares leaning up towards me with content smiles on their faces. The three little ponies and the big bad wolf. Once upon a time, there was three little ponies who were all friends. Each wanted to move out and make their own way in the world, so each set off to build a home. The first pony to begin building a home was the Pegasus. With their wings they quickly gathered up as much cloud as they needed and built their own home to live in, managing to form their home before either of the others had even found a suitable material. "Ha! I've made my home the quickest of all," said the Pegasus pony. "The other two must be feeling so jealous." Silly gleamed with happiness, even letting out a small giggle at the voice I put upon the young Pegasus pony. The other two smiled greatly also, letting me know my audience was captivated by my words. Soon enough though, the unicorn pony was finished with her home. From logs, sticks and magic she built a very fashionable, charming cabin that could hold two ponies in all. It may have not been the biggest of the two, but it was surely a beautiful home. "Ha!" The young unicorn laughed aloud. "I've made the most beautiful home of all. That silly earth pony hasn't even begun their home," she announced. "I'll be the talk of the town." Meanwhile, the third pony, the earth mare, still searched for materials to build from. "What happens next? What happens next?" Silly asked with a giggle. This definitely seemed to be her favorite of the stories, judging from the way she was so excited, though the other two were still smiling like mad mares as I read for them. The ox letting out a small shudder of excitement as I turned the page with a wingtip. "We'll just have to read on and see, won't we?" I responded, quickly lowering my eyes back to the page. But as the first pony snuggled up in her home, the big bad wolf slowly crept towards the new residence. Looking through the windows, he saw a tasty-looking pony and she basked in her speedy build. Licking his lips, the big bad wolf drew in as much air as he could into his lungs. And then he huffed, and he puffed, and he blew the house away. He let out a small gasp and a giggle as I mimicked the actions, causing me to lay out my own giggle in response. The ox simply blushed and bit her lip as her cheeks turned red and the smile on her face grew. Realizing her house had just been blown apart, the Pegasus pony flew away as quickly as she could. Her new home completely destroyed by the big bad wolf. Still, she had managed to get out safely and reached the unicorn's home before the wolf could catch up. Let me in," she cried. "A big bad wolf blew my house away." With haste, the unicorn let her Pegasus friend in. Though the wolf wasn't in sight, they now worried for their friend, the earth pony. Looking through the window, they saw she was still building her home, though now she had made quite some progress. They considered warning her of the threat, but the fear of the wolf was too great and they did not dare leave the safety of the beautiful wooden cabin. Looking up into the anticipating eyes of the alicorns, I smiled as I turned to the next page. The drawn-out pause making them lean in closer and their ears twitched toward me as I made them wait, anxious for me to read more. While the two ponies huddled in fear in their wooden cabin, the lone earth pony continued to strive to build her own home. Tirelessly she pulled around rocks and put them in place, locking the stones into one another with earth pony ingenuity. While it wasn't as beautiful as the log cabin across the field nor as quickly built as the cloud home of her Pegasus friend, it was a home with the spirit of its builder, the lone pony told herself. As she continued to build, the wolf approached the log cabin. Taking in a deep breath he huffed, he puffed, but he failed to blow the house away. Looking at it, the tasty treats that cowered inside would be a harder gained reward than he had first thought. Still, not to be outdone, he looked at the construction and noticed it was weak. Scratching away at the walls proved to be no real good in itself, though it did reveal the weakness of the construction. Walking away, the two ponies inside let out a sigh of relief as they thought they were safe. "But they're not, are they?" a little voice asked from below. Looking down at the end of the bed, Sandstorm's wide eyes looked up at me from under the covers with a mixture of worry and eagerness to hear more. Shaking my head at him, I agreed. "You're right. But hey, when did you sneak in here, you?" "Silly let me in earlier. I was just hiding in the bed." She said bedtime stories if I stuck around. Letting out a chuckle, I couldn't be mad even if I wanted to, which I didn't. Remembering that I had a possible audience outside of the room, I continued to read. Just as the ponies began to relax, the wolf ran at the cabin. With great force he rushed through it, breaking the magical bonds that held it all together. With a faint cry the wolf squealed, wood magically mixing into his flesh and making him into a monster even scarier than before. The magic that held the cabin together now turned him into wood. He had become a timber wolf. With screams of terror, the two mares made their escape as quickly as they could while the newly formed timber wolf still cried out in agony. Seeing that their friend's home was now complete, they galloped as fast as possible to safety. "Please, let us in. Let us in," they begged, the pair more frightened than they had ever been before. "The wolf. It tore our houses down. Please let us in." Without hesitation the earth mare let her friends in and hugged them both tightly. "You're safe here, I promise," she said. "I won't let him in here. But he's a big, scary timber wolf now," the Pegasus exclaimed, quickly backed up by the unicorn. Timber wolf, the earth pony declared. "I'll show him what's for." And with that, the earth pony grabbed one of her pans and made her way outside. True to their words, the other two's houses were in pieces and the timber wolf stared her down. Before he could even growl, however, the mare smashed him around the face with her crockery. With that, all three of the alicorns began giggling their heads off. "Wait, that's not a part of this story," the ox called out. "I don't think that's in any of them. You made that up." Smirking away, I couldn't help but chuckle along. Maybe. Once I regained composure I got back to reading, this time with less added scenes. Now all three of the ponies were in the home made of stone. Though it hadn't been as beautiful as the cabin nor as quickly built as the cloud home, the young earth mare was just as proud. Slowly the timber wolf crept up upon the house, surveying the walls. This time he knew that blowing it down wouldn't be an option, so he didn't try. Running at it as fast as he could, he jumped into the wall, only to fall apart. For a moment the mares jumped for joy, though their celebration was quickly ended as he formed back together, his new magical abilities keeping him as one. Looking up, the wolf knew that going through was not an option either, but it seemed there was luck yet, for above was space for him to fit through if he tried hard. Two of the ponies inside shook in fear as they heard the wolf climb, though the third and final pony smiled in glee as a chill blew through her home. Peeling some carrots and placing potatoes into a pan of water, she began to prepare a meal for herself and her friends. As if she had known what was going to happen all along, the earth pony took her flint and steel and waited by the fireplace. With a crashing thud the wolf came down and began to snarl at his next victims, trapped inside of the house easy for him to get. But all was not as it seemed. Just as the wolf growled, the final pony struck the metal and caused a fire, lighting the timber wolf, burning him alive. As quickly as he had come down, he turned to firewood and nothing more. The ponies now had a lovely fire going and a feast to enjoy, taking in the irony of the wolf's actions as they sat down for dinner. "And that's the end of the story," I announced happily, grinning at my captivated audience. Another, the ox begged. "Please. The next one is my favorite." Looking at her as she looked back at me, I simply couldn't argue with those soppy eyes that looked into my soul. Her pout so heartwarming that there wasn't any other choice I could make. I had to read one more story. "Okay," I softly said. "For you." Turning the page, I read the title, "The Coming of the Prize." The ox let out a happy giggle and cuddled up to Helios, whom happily wrapped her sister up in her loving hooves. It was a very, very sweet sight indeed to see the green alicorn happily welcoming the embrace that seemed to make the ox even happier than before. Sisterly love was definitely something these three shared. Looking back to the page, it had been a long, long time since I had this story told to me and I could hardly remember any of it myself. Taking in a deep breath, I began to read. The Coming of the Prize. Once, a long, long time ago, there was a land unlike any other. Dark skies crowded with clouds that morphed under seemingly endlessly set the tone for a landscape of dismay and decay. Trees turned pink and purple, grass no longer green but gray. The ponies of Equestria lived in a chaotic, unhappy world. The ponies had all worked together for many generations come. The Wendigos had come and passed with the unification of the three races. But now none were happy. An even greater cause than had ever been encountered before ruled the land. Chocolate rain clouds zoomed on by, threatening any ponies who thought they could have fun by drenching them with cotton candy, so animals would trample them with extended length legs, while whole hills would move around freely and make any pony foolish enough to try climbing them keep on walking forever. Wow! Sandstorm called out in the mixture of excitement and confusion. That sounds really fun, yet scary and weird. Indeed it must have been. I agreed. I can't imagine what it'd be like living in that kind of world. I mean, we've got it rough here, sure, but at least we all have one another and we can fight for a better world. We can rebuild and we can do what we must to see it improve. The one these ponies lived in, though, that was different to ours. Read more. More, please. The ox begged. With a smile I entertained her request. The Pegasus ponies tried their best to remove the clouds, but even when they worked together, for every cloud they kicked away another two appeared. And the unicorns tried their best to use magic to change the world to the way it was before, but even as they teamed together they simply couldn't do a thing about it. The earth ponies used their might to move mountains, but as quickly as they were gone they were back without explanation. The world was bleak and hopeless, for the only being that was enjoying any of it was the Draconicus that controlled it all. The ponies were terribly sad. No matter how they worked together, no matter how they worked alone, nothing they could do would change the way they lived. As slaves, as toys, life seemed like it would never get better. But then, at this point I gave pause as Eos' face lit up, her legs kicking slightly in anticipation. I gave her a smirk and winked, and her smile grew even larger. But then great beams of light broke through the clouds, the grass grew green and everyone stared. From above came two figures, two beautiful figures. Looking down on the ponies below, they were different than any other. With horns and wings, these two figures touched down under the ground below. The first of the two with her white coat and radiant pink mane, while the second bore a two-tone of blue for her coat and mane. Taller than any other, more beautiful than any who had been laid eyes on before. Two figures stood proud amongst the light not seen since the reign of chaos. Immediately the Draconicus came to them, attempted to manipulate them. Instead, his powers were worthless. Who are you? What are you? Asked the deity of chaos, bringer of unhappiness. His lips curling into a smile as Samepani dared to challenge his rule. Never before had Samepani shown such ability, for many had tried though none had even come close. Until now. We are the prize. The first mentioned confidently. We come with the elements of harmony. This land shall no longer fear your terror, Discord, stated the second. Rolling his eyes, Discord laughed. Prize. Well, I have certainly never heard such a thing, he muttered swiftly. What is that, HMM? As one, the two sisters stepped forward and spoke with determination. The prize is what we are, guardians from above here to stop you. With our wings, we represent the Pegasi. With our horns, we portray the unicorns. With our strength and determination, we honor the earth ponies. With our will, with the magic of friendship, we hold the elements of harmony and cast you to stone. We are the prize, guardians of Equestria. True to their word, their magic struck forth in unity and cleansed the world of Discord's magic. Before he could act, he quickly found himself turned to stone in a triumphant act of grace for all of ponykind. Equestria was beautiful and green again, quickly accepting these new alicorns as their prize, as their princesses, as their leaders. And that is the story of how the princesses Celeste and Luna came to be, for the betterment of Equestria. Closing the book before gently putting it down on the dresser across the room, I then focused on my pitbuck, which was still broadcasting, and gave one final message. That concludes the stories, folks. Remember, there is someone who cares about all of you out there, and there are those who fight for a better life for you and every pony else. Be you pony, zebra, donkey, or any other race, we'll fight for a better tomorrow, for you. Sweet dreams and good night, Colchester.